Hello everybody and welcome back. If you were at the Freelance Festival last week, you might remember that I mentioned we had some post-festival workshops coming up, and one of those is Are You Digitally Ready? A little bit of information if you don't know much about the festival. It runs usually every second year, but this year we ran it online because of obvious problems with the pandemic. And it was a fantastic 3-day event, and it's all about upskilling, networking, meeting successful freelancers across all fields. And what we try and do is just connect everybody in Launceston, which is a great place to freelance and remote working. And we've got the best internet in Australia, so it's a really good place to come and work. So the festival aims really is to just bring everybody together every couple of years. So what I'd like to do now is introduce our guest speaker today. As we all know, having a digital presence is really, really important, essential for everybody working today, and particularly if you're running your own business. So I'd like to introduce Talora, who's going to be running this session today, and a little bit of background about Talora. Talora is a marketing consultant from King Thing Marketing. She's passionate for all things in the digital space. Her favourites are strategic planning, social media, and digital advertising. As one of the leading digital ready coaches in the state of Tasmania, she mentors hundreds of businesses each year to reach their marketing goals. So thank you, Talora, for coming along and presenting this post-festival workshop.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm really excited to be here.
Fantastic. I'm just going to make you the host as we discussed before, so you can share your screen.
Excellent.
And there we go. And yeah, over to you, Talora.
Thank you. So I'm just going to share my screen with you all so you can see it straight away.
Just before you start, Talora, if questions come up in the chat, would you like me to feed them to you, or would you like people to wait till the end of the session?
No, feed them through. It's always good to do them as the topics are talking about, because then they put it into greater context, but I'll also allow time at the end to go back and ask questions as well.
Fantastic. So if everybody heard that, if you want to ask Talora a question, just put it in the chat and I'll let her know that you've got a question there.
Sorry, my screen has gone black.
Oh, the black screen of death. Yeah.
Always the way. I use this technology all the time, but for once it's decided just to...
So we can see it.
You can see it? Okay. Perfect. Yeah. No, that's cool. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm Talora, as Susan mentioned, and I am from King Thing Marketing. So we are a marketing agency based in Launceston that specialise in anything in the digital marketing space. So we build websites, we manage social media accounts, we develop strategy, we have a graphic designer. I guess the benefit of us being able to be a part of this Digital Ready program is that we get to live and breathe in the space, and we actually get to physically do the things that we talk about. So when you guys are having issues, and I'm sure many of you have experienced maybe some frustrating issues when you're using Facebook or Instagram, and you think, why does this do this to me? You're not alone. We experience that too, and I'm on the platform every day. I can jump on, and one day it could be completely different to how it was the next. So it can be an extremely frustrating thing to be a part of, so I completely understand that. So I am here today because of the Digital Ready program. So the Digital Ready program, for those of you who may not know, is all about helping Tasmanian businesses get online. So what they love to do is that they offer 2 hours free mentoring to any person who has a Tasmanian ABN. So you just have to be a Tasmanian registered business, and that's where you can access 2 hours free personalised coaching for you to come and ask the questions that you specifically want answered. So that may be on SEO, it may be on social media, it might be about how do I build a website, or you may even just want to come and say, hey, this is what I'm doing, can we just go through it, and can you tell me what I could do better, or what should I also be doing to make sure that I'm seen on the online world. The other part of the Digital Ready program is the website. So the website is a really great resource and tool because it has loads of information that you can access at any time to go through different topics that you may need, I guess, some extra assistance on. And this year in particular, it also has all of our presentations on it. So generally what we would do is go around the state, and we would we would deliver presentations like this one today, and they'd be on different topics. But because of COVID, we can't do that. So this year we've been filming our presentations, and so they're all available online, and each month we'll bring up new topics. So we've got one specifically on SEO, we've got one on Instagram, one on LinkedIn, which is our newest one. There's one on how to create a digital strategy. So heaps of different things and that you can go and access. So if you haven't already, go and have a look at that. It's free for everyone to access. So if you're not a Tasmanian business, at least you know you can go and access the Digital Ready website and those presentations that are available on there. So what we're going to talk about today is tackling the digital landscape. So we're going to go through a couple of different things. So we're going to go through why digital channels are so important to us, the digital channels that we can use as a business or as ourselves as a freelancer. Sorry, I'm just checking. And how to communicate through content. So we're going to look at the best ways that we can communicate through our content. We're then going to provide you some content tips and some tips also for social media. And then I'm going to provide you some free tools and resources that you can use to help when you're creating that content, whether it be for your website or social media. If you do have any questions, feel free to ask them on the chat facility, and I'll be more than happy to answer them throughout the presentation. Also happy to answer them at the end. I'll allow some time for questions. No question is silly, so please feel free to ask absolutely anything, and I'll try my best to assist. So we'll get started.
Someone's just said the PowerPoint isn't displaying properly on their end. Doesn't seem to be moving through the slides. I don't think you've started moving through yet though, have you?
So I'm on a screen that shows number one, let's put this into context. Can the person see that?
We've got Freelance Festival presentation is the first one we can see.
Okay, no, I have been moving through the slides, so I'm just going to stop sharing and I'm going to go again and see if that makes a difference.
Okay. So for those of you who are looking at the chat, I just put the website in there that Talora was talking about. Here we go. Yes, we can see it now.
Perfect. Sorry about that, guys. Gotta love digital technology.
It always goes wrong when you need it the most.
Exactly right. So please let me know if there are any other issues with the presentation and you can't see it. So we'll go through now and we'll put all of what I'm going to talk about into context for today. So the reason that we need to be in this online digital space, whether it be through social media channels or through a website, is that we need to be found online. So 89% of us don't know a business name or a person that we're looking for. We just know the product or service that we're after. So we often turn to Google or social channels to be able to look up and do some research to find the answers to our solution. So it's really important that we are found in that online digital space. There we go, 89% of us. So almost 8 in 10 people use social media. So that's 79% of us that use social media, which is a lot higher than the year before last. And I know for a fact that even though we don't have the stats yet, some of the information that's been coming through during the time of COVID is that we have found a lot more people have been jumping online. They're starting to use social platforms like Facebook and Instagram because they found it as a great way to communicate with their friends and family during the pandemic. So we know that now more than ever, it is really crucial to be in that social media space when we're trying to present our services. And I just wanted to share with you guys just a little bit about the user by age stats. And the reason that I wanted to share this was that sometimes people are quite surprised by the percentage of users in those age brackets. So we can see here that as expected, young people and those millennials, they're 99 and 96% of them are using that social media space. But what's really interesting is we also have 86% of people aged between 40 to 49 years that use social media, 66% between the ages of 50 to 64, and most impressively, 47% of people aged 65 years and older are on a social media device. Majority of the time this is Facebook, but it does just show you that there are people that are aged in those categories that are online. So if you are trying to reach those people in that target market, it is a great space to be in. So that's just a little bit of context and a little bit of stats to go around it. It's not something I wanted to go too much into because it can get quite boring when we read lots of stats, but I just wanted to, I guess, touch base and show you why it is important to be online. So now what we're going to go through are some of the digital channels that you can use as a business or as an individual freelancing. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is a website. So for those of you who don't have a website, or you're thinking, should you have a website? It possibly is a really important thing to have. So as we were talking about in the stats before, 89% of people turn to Google to look for an answer to a problem that they're having. So if they're looking for a journalist to write a specific piece, or they're looking for a particular consultant, they're going to go to Google and search the type of thing that they're looking for, and you want to be able to come up in their searches when they're doing this. So our website is the hub of all your online activity. It's the place where we want to drive people to the most. So having a website that's branded for you is really important because it can showcase your portfolio, other pieces of information or services that you offer that maybe people didn't know about. So perhaps you even offer a training in how to write in journalism, for example. So it's a great space for you to be able to communicate your services and build those leads and generate some sales eventually. The other thing is that it's your own piece of property in the digital landscape. So it's a little bit like having a bricks and mortar store if you're a retail site. Having a website is your own piece of property out there in the digital landscape that makes you and you're unique in that business sense, that you're able to put yourself out there in the marketplace a bit further than what you could if you didn't have a website, for example. What a good website should look like. So if you do have a website at the moment and you want to make sure that it is functioning the way that it should, a good website should be engaging. It should help solve problems for people. So if somebody's looking for somebody to help them with a business proposal and they've put into Google that they were looking for a person to help with that. So that's a problem that they're having. We want to be able to solve that with our website and with our solution of our services. So it's really important that our website conveys potentially even the problems people may be facing and how we can help them solve it. It will also be really informative. So we always will have a large amount of information on there about who we are, what we do, and maybe some examples of what we've done so that they can really understand what we're about and what we're trying to convey to them. We also want to make sure that customers have a chance to take action from our website. So this may be in the form of a contact us. If you are selling courses, it might be to purchase a course. It may be that you want them just to give you a call. So all of those different options are what you're wanting to push them to doing on your website. You need to make sure are very clear and obvious to the person that's on your site. And the last thing is you want your website to be entertaining. I'm not sure how many of you joined the festival last week, but there was a guest speaker called Rachel Berger, and I know she's a great example of a person who has a personal website, and just the way that she's written the site is very much the way that she would entertain people if she was publicly speaking. And I find it really, I guess, captivating to read the content on her website because you just want to keep reading it because even though she's talking about her services and her emceeing and all of those things, you feel a little bit excited to read what she's written about, and you already feel like you know her a little bit just by reading it. So having an entertaining website is a really crucial thing as well. So that's all about our website. So I will come back and talk about some of the content tips that are specific for websites a little bit later on. But now I'm going to go through the social channels. So another big aspect, I guess, of being online is being in that social space. So our website is possibly the thing that will help people find us, but our social pages are a great way to communicate with those who have already engaged with us before. And they may have worked with us, and it's a way to remind them of who we are, what we're about, and how they could add value by using our services. So being on the right social channel for your target audience is really important. So we're going to go through the different channels now, who the type of people are that are using that platform, so it might help you decide if you want to use it or not. I'm a big believer in, especially if you're starting out, to start off minimally with your social channels. Don't try and be on all of them because it can get really hard to manage them. You want to make sure that if you're doing something, you're doing it right. So focus your attention on maybe one or two, and then once you've built up your skills on that, then move to the other platforms. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is Facebook. So Facebook is probably one of the biggest platforms, I guess, in the world. We know that it has many positives, but we also know it has some negatives. But I guess for us, Facebook is really important because it's a great way to communicate with all different age brackets. So we can see here that a lot of millennials do use the platform. So they're this purple line up the top. So at least 85% of them do. But we can also see here that Gen X is the second highest age bracket on Facebook. And a lot of the time when we talk about using Facebook in a business sense, is that we actually talk about how you use it to communicate with that older generation. So if you are trying to attract customers or people for your services that are over the age of 40, Facebook is a great way to do that because that's where they're going to notice you. We can also see here that the boomers are quite high in that list, and considering that there are people out there that would think that they're not online, it's really interesting that 60% of them are on Facebook, and so they use it as a way to communicate with each other, a great way to communicate with their friends and family, especially during this pandemic. But again, it's a great space for us to be in, to know that we can target those people through this channel. It's probably the easiest channel, I guess, to start with. So if you're looking at where do I start with a business, depending on what you're trying to do, and especially for people who are journalists and may potentially want to share blog articles that they've written or pieces of their work, of their written work, Facebook is a great tool to be able to link to our websites directly and encourage people to read those pieces of work. And it's just an example of what Facebook can look like on your mobile or your desktop device. Yeah, that's pretty much Facebook in a nutshell. The next channel that is possibly growing just as fast as Facebook and probably going to potentially overtake it one day is Instagram. Instagram is a really great platform because it's something that people find really easy to use, easy to look at, and they can find that they spend a lot of hours on there because they're just siphoning through different photos rather than having to read copious amounts of information. So it's a really aesthetically pleasing type of platform. So it's all about having that picture perfect image. But what I really love about Instagram at the moment is this shift towards having more genuine content on there, especially through Instagram stories. And I'll talk a little bit more about Instagram stories later on and how you can use them effectively. But I think the thing that makes Instagram really popular at the moment and using those Instagram stories is that it is genuine, it's real, it's in the moment. And we can see that that's why people are starting to shift towards it, because they feel a bit more, I guess, engaged and a more of a community sense when they're on Instagram. So it's a great platform to, I guess, share your more behind the scenes and that personal life, which is something that a lot of people really want to see on your business pages. So with social media, I guess something that's really important is it's all about showcasing who you are as a person and sharing your beliefs and your values and what you do in your day-to-day life, because that's what people connect with. It's what they want to know. They don't want to know about the fact that you'd worked on some project. They're like, oh, that's amazing, but they'd be more excited if you put up a picture with your dog and you're taking it for a walk on the beach. You get great engagement from that type of thing because they can build up a bit of a personality background to connect with on that level. So Instagram is predominantly used by the younger generation. In saying that, we are starting to see a shift of, I guess, that middle-aged mum bracket really shifting to Instagram and really enjoying it. So the reason that they joined the platform in the first place was that they realized their kids were no longer on Facebook, and they're like, oh, what's this Instagram that they're all on and they're talking about all the time? So they decided, okay, I'm going to go check this out. Now we know that kids have obviously disappeared off the platform because of this, But even so, their mums have stayed on Instagram because they like the way it functions. They like the fact that they can just cipher through those photos, and they feel that they can see a greater connection with using that rather than Facebook. So we can see that that's grown to 40% over the last 12 months. And I know that from previous stats, that started about 20%. So it's pretty much a double increase from the year before, which is really exciting. So it'll be really great to see the stats in that next year to see how much that's grown over the last 12 months. So as you can see, we've got the aesthetically pleasing news feed on the left here, and then that's just the desktop version. Instagram is basically an app that is only used on the mobile device. There is a desktop version, but it's not used as nowhere near as much because you can't even post on the desktop version. So another platform that you may use is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is really great if you're wanting to connect with that B2B market. So that's that business to business market. So for you guys in particular, it might be a really ideal place to have a profile on because you may get some work out of that platform. It's basically a version of having your resume online and showcasing all of the different skills and expertise that you have. You'll see here from the statistics, it's a fairly broad range of people that use LinkedIn. And that's just because it depends on the different industries that are involved. So we find that it is a very split platform. So we see that there's the same males as there are females, definitely more of a shift towards the professional type work forces, but we are starting to see a growth in other industries as well. And this is one of the ones that I was just speaking about earlier that we've just done a presentation completely on that might be worthwhile going and have a look at, because it is one of those platforms where some people still feel like they might not understand exactly how to make it work best for them. I know myself that I never have the time to go and update my personal one because it just takes too much time and effort. But if you do use it effectively, you can get some great traction and great jobs out of it. So I know there's been lots of freelancers that have used it and they use it really well to help generate their leads and to get into businesses and contracts that they never thought that was possible. So it's a great platform for you guys to be using. And I think it's definitely one that I would highly suggest that if you haven't got a profile set up on already, I would encourage you to go do so. So another platform that you may use is Pinterest. I don't see many of you wanting to use this, but if you were a photographer, for example, you may want to be on Pinterest. I know that the tourism industry in Tasmania are saying that this is going to be the next platform to watch. So it may even be worthwhile just creating that account so that the platform can see that you're an early adopter on it. We know from research that this platform is predominantly used by the female audience, and that's because they like to go on there and do some research. So whether that be research for their kids' birthday party themes, or they might want some interior decorating tips, they use it to, I guess, create a mood board of all the different things that they like, so that they can use it for inspiration. I won't go into too much depth about Pinterest, as I don't see it as being a key focus for you guys, but I just wanted to mention that there is that platform to use as well. And lastly is YouTube. So YouTube can be a really great platform because it has a very varied audience. We know that the younger male population certainly love to use YouTube, but we also know that there is such a broad range of people that use it for so many different things, whether it be in the workforce on how to do things. So I know myself, I even use it to learn how to do parts of things that I didn't know to do. So if I wanted to learn some new code for a website, I would go to YouTube. If I even wanted to learn how to do a new type of Facebook ad, you could go to YouTube and there would be a video on how to do it. So it is a fantastic platform because there's so many different ways that we can use it effectively. So that's why there's such a spread of different ages that use the platform. It's one of the ones where every year they say this, we're going to tell you who our 100% core audience is, and every year they come out with results and they're just so evenly spread out that they themselves don't know how to best target the platform to different users. The reason that I thought I would include YouTube today is that I thought it could be really worthwhile you guys starting your own YouTube accounts where you could put up your own videos where you're talking about your expertise and your knowledge that you want to share with people, or to showcase what you have to offer. So if you were a journalist that was wanting to get into, I guess, speaking type roles, or into media journalism where you wanted to go on TV, for example, or if you were just wanting to showcase your knowledge as a consultant in a different field, you could use that as a channel to be able to do that and just create short little videos that people could watch that are easy to listen to and just provide a couple of tips. So that's all of the different channels that you can access. There are obviously heaps more, and I know that there's so many different platforms that we can use now, but they're the main ones that I wanted to touch base on because they're basically what you will be thinking about using that will be effective for you in the role that you are in. I'm now going to go through how to communicate through that content. So when we are talking about content, there's a couple of different types of content. So content isn't just the written words that we are writing, it's also the images that we use, it's the videos we select, it's the abbreviations or the text style, it's all of those things combined into one that creates really good content. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that we can communicate effectively with that content through our websites and social media. And how do we do that? That's what we're going to go through now. So good content, it should increase that brand awareness. So we want people to learn about who we are through that content. We know that it now takes somebody 14 times of seeing a brand for them to remember us. So if we can give them an opportunity through that content to be able to recognize us easier, then that's what we should be doing. I think that there's some really good examples out there in the marketplace of where whatever they do, it's always around that brand awareness and that they are really trying to communicate the same messages. If you want to look at a great example, GoTo Skincare are really good at this. Whenever they use images, they're always using pastel colors. So they use like a light pink and orange. I think there's even sometimes like a dusty blue. And then all of their written content is written with humor and a bit of wit to it. And I think what's really clever is the way that they do it is it's even on the packaging of their products. So their directions of use are written in that witty language. They've got that pastel colors on the packaging, but it also showcases through to their website and then again on their social media. So it all builds up that greater brand awareness of what should happen when you are creating good content, and it flows on because we feel like we're getting that full experience on no matter what channel or wherever we go to see that brand. A good content should also tell a story. So telling a story is something that you may have heard before. It's something that a lot of people always talk about when they're talking around social media and your websites about how you need to tell your story of how you got there so that they can understand and connect with you more. And it's 100% true. People connect with other people. They don't just look at a product and service say, I'm going to pick that one. They need to feel a connection in order to use that service or to buy that product. And so if we're telling our story, they're going to be able to connect with us because they're going to understand what we stand for, whether or not that our values align. And if they can feel those types of things, they're going to be like, yes, I will work with you. So make sure whenever you're producing content that you tell that story. And that just relates back to what I was saying before, that when we are using social channels like Instagram, people want to see that behind the scenes because it helps tell that overall story and they can connect with us on a greater level. And that also builds into the next point, which is around building trust. So good content, we want them to be able to build that trust with us. We want them to be able to feel like they know us, that they could come to us and say, hey, can we do this? Can we do that? And they're not scared to use you. And lastly, it should be creative. So if we can do something that's different, so we stand out from other people, that's a really important thing to do because it's so hard. It's such a crowded marketplace now. If we were just doing all the same things, how do we get other people to notice us? And when there's such a large amount of people in a competitive landscape, we need to do some things differently. And that's where I guess looking at examples of what other people have done even in different industries and how they've effectively done it, and seeing how you could even translate that into your own pieces of information or your own work so that it stands out. So when we're talking about your brand, and whether this be your business as a brand or even yourself, you are a brand yourself, you need to make sure that everything is consistent. So we want to make sure, as I was using GoTo Skincare as an example before, that when somebody sees something of yours, they recognize your brand instantly, and they can see that that's, well, even if they read a piece of content, they'll be like, that's that person. We understand that that's their brand. So you need it to be make sure that it's consistent and that it flows on. You also want to make sure that your brand represents your values. If you believe in something really passionately and you don't include that in whatever you're doing with your content, it's going to show. So you want to make sure that you really showcase those values, again, to help build that trust and that connectedness with your audience, but also to make sure that it represents who you really are, so that you're working with people that will help you shine brighter, I guess, and to make sure that you're feeling fulfilled in the work that you're doing. It also delivers a message about what you are offering. So if your brand doesn't look like what you feel like it should, it's probably a good time to consider refreshing it and making sure it looks the way you want it to do. So if you wanted to have a really prestigious look and feel and tell people that you really want to work with, say, for example, you want to write about luxury cars, then you need to make sure that when you're delivering your messages, that you talk about how you really resonate with that luxury feel, and you really feel something when you're staying in luxury accommodation or in those extra luxuries in life. And again, we want to do things that helps us set us apart from the rest. So by having our own brand identity, we are able to do that because every person is uniquely different. And that's a really important thing to shine through in your content. So whenever we're writing our content, the most important thing to have in mind is your target market. So who are you writing this content for? You need to think about what age range these people are in, maybe what their hobbies are, even think about what they might drive, what they might wear. You could even think about the types of industries they may be in. So really nutting down and profiling the type of person you are speaking with. I know when I help a range of clients, when we're talking about deciding who their target market is, we create, I guess, a profile of a person and we name that person so that whenever we are developing any content, we know that we are writing it for that person. So for example, I had a garden business and a garden shed business that I worked with, and they had a very clear definition of who their target market is, that they were talking to a builder, they loved the football, they earned a decent salary because they probably were had gone out on their own in their business. So whenever they had named, I think, him Larry or Gary, and so whenever they wrote any pieces of content, they would write it and then they would say, does this resonate with Gary? Would he respond with this? Or do we need to change something in it so that Gary would actually want to respond with this and answer it? So if we were talking about buying a shed, you might even talk about how you could save time so that you could have start the beers earlier and things like that, because we knew that would resonate with that particular target market just because we'd created that target profile and really understood who it is we were trying to speak with. And I guess as part of any process with any business, you really need to understand who it is that you're trying to attract and talk to so that it can stand out from that crowd, but also resonate with that audience that you are trying to attract. Now, do keep in mind, you may have more than one target market. So whenever you're producing different content, it may be for different target markets, and that's completely fine. But as long as you have a clear definition of who it is you are trying to talk to, it will make things a lot easier. And once you have that target market identified, it's then easy to be able to identify what your tone of voice is. So there's no point having a particular type of tone of voice as a business if it doesn't resonate with your target market. So we want to make sure that it relates in a way that they're going to connect with it. So in that example with Gary, if we didn't use those blokey type terms of mate and g'day and let's have a beer, and we tried to say things like let's have a wine and hello there and being a little bit more formal, we possibly wouldn't have seen the engagement rates that we did because we didn't have the correct tone of voice to want to speak with them. So making sure that not only do you understand who your target market is, but how that you need to speak to them in that tone of voice is really important, and understanding whether it be casual, factual, informative, that's okay. And again, if you do have different target audiences, you may have a different tone of voice for different audiences, and that's okay as well. And a great example of this that I see quite commonly with different businesses is that they might use Facebook to talk to their target market, which is mainly people who are probably a little bit of an older generation, and so that's where they speak a little bit more formally. They're probably a bit more educational in the way that they speak, where on Instagram they know that they've got a bit of a younger audience that they're trying to target with their product or their service. So on that platform, with their tone of voice, they're a little bit quirkier. They say a couple of things that they know they probably couldn't say on Facebook, and that's completely fine as well, as long as it overall links back in with your brand and it's still consistent between the two platforms and talks to that correct target audience. And lastly, whenever you are writing any pieces of content, make sure that you think of the goals of what you're trying to achieve are. So there's no point writing something if you're just writing it. You want to have a goal in mind. So it may be that you just wanted to let them learn a little bit more about you as a person, and that's why that behind the scenes thing is really important to communicate. But it may be that you want them to take an action. So you may want them to visit your website. You may want them to read your blog post. So think about, what is that end goal that you're trying to create with that content, and does it achieve that? Do we point them in that direction? And something that I always keep in mind in especially with social media, I guess, when it comes to goals, is that be really specific about what you want them to do. Quite often we see posts and they'll talk a little bit about what that blog post might be about, but that's all it says. If you want really good results, say at the end, to read more, click below. It sounds silly and sounds really obvious, but people need that type of information or those types of instructions in order to be able to achieve the goal that you're trying to achieve. We're very, I guess, systematic types of people, I guess, in the sense that we need to be told what to do in order to take that action. So if you can be really specific with those goals that you're trying to get them to achieve, please do it. So another way to help us when we are trying to communicate effectively is to make sure that we plan our content. And so a way that we can do that is we can develop a thing known as a content planner. So I'm going to take you through an example of a content planner that we use internally at Kingthing Marketing, and I can provide Susan, the coordinator of this event, a template of this so that she can send out to the participants who are watching today to learn more, to use this particular template. But this content planner is all about making sure that we're focused, we know what we're going to write about, and in particular is really important when we're thinking about communicating on social media channels, if we have a blog that we need to do, if you do any email marketing, all of those different places where we might produce content. It keeps us in check and makes sure that we, I guess, vary the different content pieces that we put out there, but also ensures that we actually follow through and do it. I know it's too easy to say, I'm going to do these things, but then actually getting them done can be another story. So this is a way to kind of help keep us on track and make sure that we do what we need to do. So the first thing that we do as part of the content planner is we do a bit of a brainstorm session. So this brainstorm session is where we come up with all the different types of ideas of what we would like to write about. Generally, we come up with 4 to 6 different categories, and then underneath those categories, we put a whole heap of different post ideas. So this example here is of one that I use on a page that I manage. So this page is all about helping Tasmanians get online into the digital space. So it's just a very basic, I guess, one to be able to show you how it can work as a content plan. So for this particular page, we have a theme called apps and programs. And so I've listed all the different types of apps that I could write about that could help benefit people who are new to the online space. So I've got things like Skype and bank apps, weather apps, we've got Pillboxy, podcasts, ebooks. I've also got another category called smartphone, and so under that I've got all the different things that I could teach them to use on their smartphone. So the way that you guys could use this content planner is you could have your services here as a content category. You could have the behind the scenes, so you might share things like your birthday, different milestones that you've reached, more about behind the scenes in the process of how you do your work. You might even have things like, if you have other team members, you might share some information about them, or you may even have one where a theme is to share other businesses' posts, and that can be a really good strategy to have to show that community spirit and that community value in what you are doing. So it's about creating those different categories to mix it up over the different social pages, so you're not always posting the same theme all the time. And then once you've come up with this brainstorm, which is something that you can continuously add to, by the way, you'd then be able to put it onto an actual calendar. So the calendar will have the date and the day, and then you can go and have the different channels that you're posting on. So if you're posting on Facebook and Instagram, you can make sure that your content's varied and that you're putting the different topics on those pages. So for this example, they only use Facebook. So we've got, they'll do a post on social tips and apps and programs, and then digital tips and a how-to case study. And the reason that we plan it out like this is so that we can see that we're putting different content out there. I don't specifically go into what each post will be about, but I know that I could then refer to that brainstorm that we were on before and say, okay, I've done a post on this, or I know I haven't done a post on that before, let's do one on this. Some people like to be really specific on this and actually write down, I guess, what it is they're actually going to post on, but it's completely up to you how you use it, and it depends how organized or how far planned you like to be, I guess. The other great thing about this calendar is it also ties in the national holidays. So a great social content theme is to tie in with different things like National Chocolate Day or National Donut Day, and do a post of yourself on that day. So I know at King Thing, one of our highest ranking posts ever on social media is when it was National Donut Day. We ate some donuts, and all we did was share a picture of our team eating the donuts and said, Happy National Donut Day. And I think received like 300 likes on Facebook. We had so many comments saying, I didn't even know it was that. I'm going to go out and buy a donut now. And it was such a simple and such a basic post, but it's always a good idea if you can tie in with some of those different national days to just do a simple post like that can be really effective. It's also a really good idea if you have industry specific national days to tie in with those as well, because it's sharing the, I guess, the love of the national day that you're a part of in that industry. We also have a tab here for local events. It's probably not as important at the moment because there aren't too many events happening, although there are a lot of virtual events like this one. So you're able to actually, if you did events yourself, you could pop those events into this calendar, and then a 3-week out period, you would know, okay, I've got the Freelance Festival event coming up. I might start doing a post about that 2 weeks before to let people know that I'll be speaking at that festival, for example. So as I said, this is just a tool to help you plan your content out and to help make sure that you're communicating to all of the different channels effectively. It helps ensure that you are posting consistently on the social channels, which I'll talk about a little bit later on, about how important it is to be consistent on those channels and posting as regularly as we can. It also ensures that we have different content ideas to post about, so we're not sitting there thinking, oh, what can I post about today? Yeah, so that's just a little bit about planning your content. So now we've gone through how to effectively communicate, which was all about really talking to your target, understanding who your target audience is, the tone of voice that they like to speak with, and then what your goals are when you are writing that pieces of content. And then making sure that you plan that content effectively will help you communicate greatly in the digital space. We're now going to go through some tips on each different things. So we're going to go through your website tips, so that'll be for that platform, and then we'll go through some social tips.
Tallulah, I'll just see if anybody wants to ask any questions before you move on to websites. Would anybody like to ask Tallulah anything before we move off the social platforms? I know one question I had was, how large an audience would you consider you need to have on social to be really getting your message out there? Like, sometimes we see people have a few followers, sometimes there's thousands of followers. What would be a good average for social, do you think?
Yeah, it's a really great question, and it's one of the harder questions to answer because it is going to be completely different for everybody. And I know that especially if you're new to social, it's a lot harder to get people to like your page now. People don't do it as easily as they did before. But I think no matter what your audience size is, it's important to communicate with them on a regular basis. If you can try and have 500 followers, that's fantastic. But I also know that that's a large amount of people to get following your page. So even having 100 or 200 is a really good realistic goal to set for a 12-month period to build up over time. I know many businesses who have maybe 3,000 or 4,000 followers on their page, but they don't even know how many of those people actually read their posts. Most of those people probably started following the page because they've run a competition to encourage people to like their page, and they don't even really need their product or service and will never become a potential customer or client. So I guess if you can make sure that even if you do have a smaller audience, that they're the type of people that you actually can get some work out of, it is more important.
Great. We've had another question come up. When engaging with clients, followers, how regular is regular?
Yeah, no, great question. So again, it's a little bit like how long is a piece of string as to how many times we should post a week. But if you can at least manage once a week, that would be great, because the Facebook and Instagram algorithm, they pick up how often we are posting. So consistency is the key. So if we can at least aim to post once a week on each platform and try and post different things on each platform, because sometimes we do get that double up of people following our pages, unless it's a really important message that we need to get out there on both platforms. Try and keep it separate and post on different days. If you can just post at least once a week, that's great. If you can do more and you have more time to do that, that's even better. So it just depends how much time you've got and what resources you have to be able to do that. But at least posting once a week on each platform is essential to connect with your audience. We don't want to bombard them with too much by posting every day. So it's a great way to find, it's a bit hard to find that balance and knowing where it is, but as I said, it's different for every person depending on how much time or resources that they have. But if you can be as consistent as possible, that's the most important thing.
And how much is too much, would you say, with posting? You don't want to post 5 times a day, do you?
No, so you definitely don't want to post 5 times a day. That's only important if you have a really large following. So a great example of that is Nike and Coca-Cola. They have millions and millions of people millions and millions of people following their pages. So they post 5 times a day in the hope that you would see at least one of those 5 posts that they put up. Ideally, you only want to do 1 post per day. Sometimes you might have to do multiple. There may be something that you really need to communicate out there, but it's more important about just doing that 1 post per day. And if you can aim to do maybe 2 of those types of posts in a week, that's fantastic.
And it would depend on the platform too, wouldn't it? Because Twitter, for instance, you might post a bit more regularly on Twitter than you would Facebook.
Yeah, that's correct. So with Twitter, sorry, I forgot to mention that as a social channel earlier on. So Twitter in particular is one where you have to be constantly feeding it for it to make sure that your posts are seen by everyone. And I guess that's one of the reasons why Twitter never really took off in Australia so well, because people are too lazy and they don't want to sit there and constantly tweet. So if you are using Twitter, you do have to be quite effective in the fact that you need to sit there and you need to tweet. And that is one of those platforms where you might have to tweet 5 times a day, which can get quite time consuming, but they don't need to be long tweets. I guess that's the bonus. But yeah, it's a great platform for journalists to use though, because it helps build connections and helps get media stories out there. So I can understand why in some industries, Twitter is really important.
Okay. Any more questions before we move on, or else Talora will move on? Looks like you're free to move on, Talora.
No worries, thank you. Just going to take a quick drink. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about websites now in depth, and then I'll go back to some social tips. So when we are writing on our website, there's just a couple of things that we recommend following. So it's really important to never say I. I know that's really hard because most of us are probably our own individual self as a business, but sometimes we like to make sure people feel like there's more than one of us that's part of that team. So if you can try and write in the third person, please do. I understand it can be quite difficult in what you're trying to write, and sometimes you do need to have that personalized approach on your site. But what we find is that when people write in that first person, they don't always feel like there's a team of people there to help them. But again, it's very different for what you guys are doing. So it's something that I would say normally not to do, but in your case, I'd nearly say that it is okay to actually say I. Consumer facing. So whenever we are writing on our website, we want to think about that end user in mind. So we want to write for that customer or that client. We don't want to write about our business. So it's important that we're writing to them. So if we're solving a problem for them with our services, we need to write what their problem is and then say, how are we going to solve it through using our services? So think about that when you are writing for content on your website. So again, be consistent. It's a key theme of today. Whenever we are doing anything, consistency. So make sure if we write in a particular style on one page, that style flows through onto all of the pages on the website. The last tip there for writing is all about SEO, which is search engine optimization. So for some of you may be familiar with that. That's our ability to be able to be found online through Google searches, for example. We do keyword research and we write in our content on our website keywords that we know people are searching for, so that when people are looking for that term, our website appears in the Google searches. But something that's really important when we do that is that we don't keyword stuff our content. So we don't want to be saying the same keyword on repeat, because our users will get very annoyed by it, and it just shows that we are just trying to keyword stuff for that search algorithm. And we know now that those algorithms are picking up when people are doing that, and they're actually punishing those sites that are doing it. So please avoid it where possible. Photography, especially on a website, is really important. It's kind of the thing that can make or break a website. If you can, invest in some really good photography. So even if it's portraits of yourself, try and get some professional photos taken. We are also very fortunate that we do have great technology at our fingertips. So most of us probably own a smartphone device that has a really great camera on it, possibly even better than some of the DSLR cameras that are out there in the marketplace. So if you can use that to take some excellent photography, use the features on your phone. So they've got so many things embedded into it that you possibly didn't even know existed on there. Just have a play around with it and see how you can use it. I know for myself, portrait mode is a fantastic feature on an iPhone, and I know that you can access it on an Android, like one of the latest devices of Android as well, because it can really clearly focus in on a subject and then blur out the background, and it can look like a professional has taken that image. So have a play around, see what your phone features, and if you can take some really great shots. And the other thing to keep in mind when you are using photography on a website is if you are trying to attract a particular type of target market, try and make sure that they're featured in some of the photos as well. There's no point having photos on a website of people that aren't your target market, because they're not going to resonate with them. So a lot of the time when we talk about imagery, we think about the fact that we want them to visualize themselves enjoying that experience or being a part of that experience. So if they can see themselves in that image so that they can resonate that that's themselves with that target audience, then they're more likely to purchase your product or service. And the last tip that I've got there is that there are a number of free photo editing apps out there that you can access. I talk about one a little bit later on the tools and resources that I love, called Canva. It's free to use, and you can edit your photos so that they look really professional before adding to your website and even to social media. So when it comes to writing content for your website, it's really important that you provide your visitors with an introduction about your business. So when they first go onto your site, it's really important to have that beautiful, possibly stunning image to welcome them into that page, but we also want to make them feel welcome in that intro paragraph. So it's a great opportunity for you to be able to talk about what your business is and how you can assist them with the problem that they are probably facing, and how we have the different paths that they can follow. And those paths then may lead onto different pages on the website, but it's all about having that, I guess, initial offering so that they can understand who you are as a business and why they might have come to that website in the first place. Again, resonating back with that target market that we're talking about earlier, you need to think about who is this website for? Does it talk to them? So that's why when we're using our photography or our videos, does it really speak to that person? Is the way that we've written that content in the correct tone of voice that talks to those types of people? So really important message, just to reiterate that point. Again, what problem are we trying to solve on the site for people? So if you have a few problems that you're trying to solve, build those problems up on individual pages and then solve them with that solution of that product or service that you're offering. It can be big or small. It might even just be something that you can do that's really different to other people. It's important to showcase it on your website. Your website is a chance for you to stand out and to be different and to really, I guess, show people what you're made of. So make sure that you're doing that in all of the different types of ways that you can, whether that be through imagery or whether it be through written content. Again, make sure that you showcase your story through that website. So really important to have that about you page so that people can learn about who you are as a person, maybe what brought you to this particular point in your career and why you have this business. Might even be a little bit about the journey as a business so far. People really resonate with this, and so that story is a great thing to be told throughout the site and definitely on something like an about page. And again, making sure that you've got that action call on your website. You'll notice on most websites, and this is a screenshot of the Freelance Festival, whenever there's a clear goal in mind that we want people to take, it'll always be in the right-hand side, and it will normally be highlighted in a bit of a box or a bit bold or something different. So you might find that might be that contact form, it might be the tickets like this one so that you can book now, it might be inquire. If you had some products that people could shop, then you would have your shop there. We naturally just drive our eyes on any website to that right hand side because we know that that's where that end goal is. And so for a lot of people, they might jump onto a website and they don't need to read anything else, they just need to get to that action point, so they'll directly divert their eyes to the right hand side. So important that we make sure that they have that ability to be able to do that on our sites. So that's about websites. I just wanted to check, are there any questions on websites that I might not have covered? Now, I know that websites is a massive topic and I could have talked so much more in depth about them, but I guess I was trying to make sure that I could cover a whole range of different things today. So are there any questions on websites in particular?
I like the fact you used the Freelance Festival website. Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
And I agree with you, having a website is essential. And as you were pointing out, directing people's eye to a certain point on your site is really important as well.
Yeah, definitely.
There is a question on each page, should you have your branding?
Yes, so great question. So generally when you build a site, depending on what platform you build it on, but most platforms, especially template-based ones, will ask you to put your logo in a different field, and then that logo would be carried out throughout the entire website pages. So it is a really good thing if you can try and have that logo on each page. And if you don't have a logo, it might be even just your name there in a particular type of font so that it really resonates with who you are as a brand. Try and use the same types of colors on the different pages that suits your branding. So I guess, yeah, it is important to make sure that the whole website is representing you as a business and your brand.
That seems to be it for the questions, I think.
No worries. We'll move on now to some social media. So with social media, there's a content rule called the 80-20 rule. So this is where we talk 80% of different things about our business or maybe about who we are as a person. And then for every for every 4 updates, our last update for that 5th update would be directly promoting our services or our business. So that may be a particular example would be, so buy our product now, we have a discount of 20% off, for example. So majority of what you guys will probably do will fall into that 80%, because what you're doing is you're telling people about who you are, your journey, you might be showcasing a bit of work, but you're doing it in a bit more of a story type of sense. So you don't need to worry about too much about this rule, but I just wanted to let you know that there is this rule, I guess that's an unspoken rule in social media, that we try and talk 80% about the things that followers will want to benefit from, and then that 20% where it is that pure promotion style posts. Again, story arcing is really important. So we've talked about how important it is to tell our story, and it can all be really exciting sometimes when we are telling our story to kind of overshare a little bit or speak so much that our post gets rather long. So we need to break it down into some story arcs. So make sure that you tease that story out over time. And so you might even do a post series that's all about learning about who you are as a person, and each week you share a different snippet of the life of who you are as a person, or even thinking about like using this image that's on the screen now. So it's just an image of a dinner party, but what you could do is tease out the story, and you could talk about how the different produce comes from different farmers. So then you might talk about each farmer in particular, where that produce was made from. Then you might do the same for the producer of the wine. Then you might even do a story around the different styling. So there's so much opportunity when you're using different pieces of content that you can really break it down into different levels. We need to remember that users are quite easily distracted. They only have a short attention span. They don't have a long time to sit there and read. So if we break it down into different story levels, they're more likely to engage with our story. They're more likely to keep engaged and want to learn more the next time you do a post. And again, it's a great way to help build that basis of story. So too often I hear people say that they don't know what to post on social media, and that's completely understandable. But when you use that content planner that I was showing you before and start thinking about how you can tease out that story, you'll find that you could easily fill out a good couple of months worth of posts just by writing those couple of things down and teasing it out to a greater level. Instagram stories. So the reason that I was talking about them so much before is that this is a place where most people are spending their time. So we know there are 500 million people that are active on Instagram stories, and 1 million of those are within Australia. It's got some great features that are great ways for us to engage with our audience in different ways than what we have been able to before. It's really genuine content, so we feel like we're more live and in the moment, and we're really understanding what people's day-to-day lives are about because of Instagram stories. There are some people who share absolutely every detail on the Instagram stories, and I'm not suggesting that we do that, but just sharing a couple of snippets on those stories can make a big difference. It's also a great way for us to talk, I guess, really live to our audience, so we can kind of film ourselves talking and keep telling that story as we are talking. And for some of us, that may be better than writing it down. It may be a great way to even talk about why you've wrote a particular piece in a particular way, so you can explain, I guess, the behind the scenes reasonings as well. So some of the features on Instagram stories to create engagement tools. So this is an example of how you could do a countdown calendar. So if you had a countdown to an event or a particular launch that you were wanting to really drum up some excitement around, you can create a countdown sticker so that people can count down to when that'll be launched. They can turn those notifications on in their own phone so that they will receive a notification when that particular thing's going live and launching. Some of the other engagement tools include adding locations. We've got polls, we've got questions and quizzes. There's the chat facility. On your personal pages, you'll even be able to add music, and that's something that hopefully we'll be able to shift across to business pages. Some business pages have access to it already, but not all business pages do, because they're just testing the feature with selected people at the moment, and then we'll all be able to have it. But I guess it's just a great way for you to be able to talk more directly with the people who follow your page and really understand what they want to hear more about from you. So live video is something that is a really great thing to get good engagement on your page. So it receives 3 times more engagement than your standard regular photo post on Facebook. there's so many channels where we can go live now. So can go live on Instagram and Facebook, but we can also go live on Snapchat and YouTube. And I'm sure that whatever platform comes up next, that there will be some form of live ability, because we know that it is quite effective. On Facebook, if you do go live, people who follow your page receive a notification to tell them that you've gone live. So it's a great way to reenact and remind people of your brand, so that they know who you are again, kind of puts them front of mind with you. Live video can be a bit daunting if you've never done it before, especially the first time. But once you jump on there, sometimes you even forget that you are live and you just start talking. And it's a good tool because people can even ask you questions whilst you're live and you can answer them directly. It's also a great way for you to collect questions to answer at a later date when you are going live. You could do interviews with it, you can do presentations. There's so many opportunities with live through social media, and it's something that if you haven't tested out already, I would recommend trying, because I can guarantee that you will get a higher engagement rate than your normal posts, and it'd be really interesting to see how you could use that to benefit your business further. So video is a massive thing when it comes to social media. It's predicted by the end of 2021, 2022, that 80% of what we see in the digital world will be in a video format, and especially through social media. As I said before, we're lazy people. We don't want to have to do too much. So if we can sit there and watch a video where they're speaking at us, we're more likely to use that video. In saying that, there is a large portion of the population that actually watch video with no sound. So we do have to add the text captions over our video, which makes no sense because they're not willing to sit there and read it in the caption above, but they're willing to sit there and watch a live motion video with that caption over the top. But I guess the most important thing is, if we do use video on our social media, we need to make sure that there's no background noise happening. So it's really quiet and it doesn't really disrupt them from the other things that are happening. Sometimes we can't help it if there's a siren in the background that just randomly pops up. But if we can try and use ways to minimize that noise when we're recording our videos, that would be ideal. And the other thing is to make sure that there's movement within the first 3 seconds. If there's no movement in the first 3 seconds, people can get quite bored and they don't know what they're really watching. So if we've got that movement, they're more willing to stay there and watch the video. I've also included in here just some different time lengths of videos. So a question that I quite commonly get asked is, how long should I be making these videos on social channels? So you can see here, Facebook posts are 1 minute. A cover photo needs to be 20 to 90 seconds. So that's just the requirement of Facebook. Facebook Lives can go up to 15 minutes. So if you really wanted to have an in-depth conversation, or you want to do a presentation, you could do that. I know that you can go even longer than 15 minutes. So I've done a Facebook Live for 1.5 hours delivering a whole presentation before. So there is that opportunity to do that with that platform. An ideal time length on YouTube is actually 5 to 7 minutes, which is really interesting because I've also seen stats that most people watch really long format videos on YouTube. So just something to keep in mind. So Instagram posts, you can post a video on there for 30 seconds. Instagram story is 15 seconds, although you can have multiple Instagram stories. So you might have like 10, 15-second videos that tell your whole story up on the Instagram story that people click through and watch the whole thing, and it just flows through as if it was a normal video on your whole that you've posted all together. I guess the newest video feature for Instagram that you may have seen or may have used is Instagram TV. This is, I guess, their way of competing directly with YouTube. So YouTube and Instagram are major competitors. Whatever they can do to stop people spending time on the opposite platform, they will try and create. So yeah, Instagram TV was created in the hopes of competing against YouTube and creating more educational type places for people to do how-to tutorials, greater in-depth interviews, even telling more of their story through that talking type style video. So with Instagram TV, they can start anything that's a video that's longer than 60 seconds will be posted through to Instagram TV. What is ideal is that they can also then put up a bit of a posting snippet onto your Instagram feed so that you can encourage people to go watch that full-length video through Instagram TV. But they can also go up to 10 minutes, and if you're a verified user, you can have up to an hour to use on Instagram TV. So when you're thinking of different content ways to engage with your audience, an example of this is to use a poll functionality. So these can be great to just get people engaged with your page a little bit more. You can just ask really different questions. So I see people sometimes even ask things like, what jam flavour do you prefer on your scones? Or I mean, we did one recently, do you put the cream or the jam on first on your scones? So they don't even need to really relate to what it is that you do. They're just a great way for us to ask them those questions that we want to ask and want to learn what people think. And for you guys, if you are a journalist, you might even use the polls as a way to, I guess, even start a conversation around maybe a topic that you're writing about. So you might want to write a topic around how do people make their scones, and so you can use this as part of your research methodology. So another example of how people use it, so in the one on the screen, is they might use it to make a massive business decision. So for this particular company, they couldn't decide how they wanted their logo to sit on their referral gift bottles. They'd narrowed it down to 2 concepts, and the team literally were divided. So they decided to take it to their community. So they see their followers on social media as a bit of a community, and some people that they respect, not some people, so people that they respect and that they trust their opinion on. So they wanted to say like, thank you for building that trust. We want to ask you a really great question. That's a massive business decision for us. Which one do you prefer? And then with the votes that were cast, they then went with that particular label style. So I thought that was a really nice way, I guess, to show your audience that you really value their opinion and you value what they think about your branding. So a great use of using the poll function on Facebook. Again, you can use poll function on Facebook just through a regular post, and you can also use it through Instagram stories. Another thing is when you are using social media, try and use emojis if you can. Remember not to use too many, especially if your audience members aren't people who absolutely love an abundance of emojis, and make sure that they're appropriate emojis. But the reason that we suggest to use them is that Facebook and Instagram, somewhere along the lines, have brought a portion of the pie into emojis. So if we do use them, the algorithm really likes us, and so that they'll promote our post out to more of the people that follow our page and to potential new people if we are running, for example, a Facebook ad. So just think about using emojis and how you could even effectively use them to communicate your story or rebuild on that branding a bit further.
Laura, I know with emojis, I often don't know when to use them. Like there's obvious ones like the clap or say a champagne glass, whatever. But I think for me, I'm never really sure when to use emojis. Is there some sort of tip you could provide about how to find out more about the proper emojis to use that would drive audience engagement?
Yeah, I guess it's one of those things about you've got to make sure that your target audience likes them, and I know it can be difficult to understand. So I sometimes even think about the content that I'm writing, and if I was talking about a particular topic and say it was food, for example, or even tractors, I would then go and look up to see if there was an emoji on that. Or if I'm making a really big announcement, I would think about the faces of what people might be feeling when they read that particular announcement. So then I would think what type of reaction people may have, and I'd look for an emoji that kind of suits that. There's not really any rule book out there on what emojis are appropriate to use in certain circumstances. So it's a little bit of just testing it out and using an emoji that you feel like relates to the content that you're writing about.
Should you put the emojis through the actual post or wait till the end? Like you often see a lot of emojis sort of scattered throughout, and sometimes it can be a little bit distracting.
Yeah, so I do tend to use them throughout, but I possibly wouldn't use too many. So my rule of thumb is to probably use maybe 1 to 2 throughout the content, depending on how large it is. And so in that circumstance, I would probably have a couple of paragraphs written and then maybe a major emoji at the end. But then for some people, they like to have all of their emojis at the end. The reason I guess I use it throughout is that I want that emoji to relate to the bit of content where it's specific. So if I was talking about cake, I want to have the cake emoji near those words, but I do tend to use them at the end of sentences rather than just in the middle of a paragraph as well. So if I'm talking about, I've got some shocking news, for example, I wouldn't put it after the word shocking. I would put it at the end of the sentence where I've got shocking news, and then have like that shock face, for example. I just think that they're a way to break up sentences rather than just in the middle of content paragraphs.
Sure. And it might be a demographic thing too, depending on the age of your audience.
100%. If you have a more conservative audience, you may just use a simple smiley face at the end of your paragraph and only have like that one, and you wouldn't do it every post. So I don't use emojis absolutely every post. I just do it occasionally when I've got something that I really feel is exciting that I need to share or feel an emoji would fit in. So it's kind of just selecting when you feel it's appropriate to have an emoji in there. So if you're delivering devastating news, it might not be the appropriate time to have an emoji in that post.
Sure. Okay, yeah. Great. Any other questions at all before Talora moves on? No, I think everyone's got through the emojis.
Awesome. And so now I'm going to talk about hashtags. So hashtags are something that I guess people sometimes get confused about, and completely understandable. There's so many different things out there about when and where should we hashtag. We see other people doing different things and we think, oh, should we be hashtagging on this platform? My suggestion is to always have a look at what others are doing, but also know, I guess, when it is appropriate to hashtag. So hashtags are ideally only used on platforms like Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest a little bit. You may use them. I personally don't like to use them on Facebook. They don't add any value to your post other than highlighting a particular word. With Instagram, they link back through to a certain like hashtag feed channel, where on Facebook they don't actually go anywhere. They only highlight the word. And it wasn't until about 12 months ago Facebook actually made the decision to even highlight the words. Before it wouldn't even do that, and the only reason they did that was because people were complaining that it didn't bold it into a blue color when they did that hashtag. A couple of things to follow when you are hashtagging: try and make sure that you create a unique hashtag that's personalized to yourself. So use that on every post that you put on Instagram. And the reason for that is that it encourages people to use that hashtag if they're using your product or service in the future and they want to tag your business in it. They're going to use that hashtag, so you can use it as a bit of a user-generated content feed to look through and see if there's something that you could reshare or repost. It also just looks good from a branding perspective to have that business name on there. With hashtags on Instagram in particular, you can have up to 30, but try not to overdo it. The magic number is meant to be between 9 and 11. It shifts all the time, but basically what they tell us is that even though we can have up to 30 hashtags, after about 11, the algorithm stops tracking those hashtags properly. Another thing I always get asked to is, should I put the hashtags in the actual comment, like in the actual post itself, or in the first comment? It is completely up to you and what you do prefer. I have done a bit of both, and I have found that through my own research that I get better traction when I put them in the caption, not in the comments. Sometimes when I add it to the comments, the hashtags don't actually filter through to the relevant hashtag feeds. So I do always tend to leave it in that original caption just to make sure that it goes through to those feeds and does what it needs to do, because hashtags can be quite powerful in building our audience up further, because people follow hashtag feeds, and if they notice your post in a hashtag feed, they might then look at the rest of your page and say, oh, you do some really cool stuff, I'm going to start following you. And that's how we can grow our audience. The other thing is to make sure that we're using a range of different hashtags. So each post that we do needs to be different. So yes, we would include that unique business hashtag or current campaign hashtag at that particular time, but we also want to make sure we use a different range of hashtags. So when I say this, try and pick ones that are relevant to your industry, even pick ones that may be even relevant to the topic or what you're posting about, so it's very varied. And when you are picking them, try and use a different variation of the number of popularity of those hashtags. So there are some hashtags that might have 52 million posts. That's all well and great to use them, but also make sure you pick some that maybe have 1,000 or 500 posts, because you're going to stay up higher in those hashtag feeds for a little bit longer. And even though they don't have as many people following them, potentially, you're going to stay at the top, where if you're on a 52 million, if there's a hashtag that has 52 million, you're possibly going to be pushed down that feed a little bit faster. So then it's not seen as by as many people who follow that feed. Yeah, that's all I really have to say about hashtags. So the last thing that I'm going to share about social is testing your timing. So I know for most of us, we often wonder when is the best time to post. Again, it's going to be completely different for each person, and it's all about testing the timing for your audience. So what I always recommend is that just vary your timing over a couple of posts. So you might do that for a month or two, just to get some data behind you so you can see what really works. And it's been really interesting with COVID. Our data has kind of been skewed a little bit because people have been working from home. They've been accessing their devices a lot more and at different times than they would if they were in an office environment, for example. So it kind of is a bit harder to test our timing at the moment. But we do know, as a general rule of thumb, if we post after 7:30 at night, we do tend to get great traction, especially if we have a target audience that is higher than 25 and above, because that's a time of night when they're possibly sitting down on the couch with a glass of red wine and they're just sitting on their phone scrolling. The hardest thing about that is that everybody knows that that's an ideal time, so everyone's trying to post at that time, and so therefore the algorithm gets quite clogged and it doesn't know where to push our posts out in that feed to fit in with everybody else. We also know that any time before 7 a.m, 8 a.m. is ideal because we've got most people who are transporting to work, especially in larger cities. They're normally on public transport, so that's the time when they would sit down and look at those posts. For things like LinkedIn, we find posting anytime between that 9 to 5 time slot works fairly well, because if we're going to check the LinkedIn platform, it is generally in those work hours, whereas Facebook and Instagram are things that we would check from a personal perspective on our lunch breaks before and after work. So when you are testing your timing, there's a couple of ways we can check how our posts work. So I'm just going to show you how you can do that through Facebook and Instagram. So this is an example of Instagram. So we can access our insights if we have a business profile page set up. And so this will tell us what time our followers are online. So we can see here on the left-hand side, that down the bottom in the followers section, we can choose the hours and days of the week when people are online. So we can see here that we have a fairly consistent timing, but on a Saturday, they're online between 9 and 9 p.m. But we can see that there is a good amount of people on between 6 and 9 p.m. So we might want to do our post then, but we wouldn't bother before probably 9 o'clock on a Saturday, because people aren't awake because they're possibly sleeping in or going to an early gym class, for example. The one on the right-hand side, which is also interesting to have a look at, is the followers section again by days. So this will tell you what day of the week might be ideal to post. For some people, they might have certain days that clearly stand out over others. But for most of us, we'll probably find that it looks exactly like this one does, where it's a really even spread of days that you could post. I generally find Thursdays are possibly the busiest day, and I think it's because people are mentally drained, and so they start just spending more time on their phones at work or at home overnight because they just want to chill out a little bit more. But we do see that there is this fairly even spread amongst most days, which is a good thing because it means we can post on any day and our followers are then going to see our posts. When it comes to Facebook, it is a little bit harder to track what time our followers are seeing us. There is a tab where we can view it directly. The problem with this is that it's actually set to Pacific time. We can't change it. It's a default of Facebook, and it's quite a frustrating thing, really. So if you want to, you can sit there and you can work out the time difference between our time and Pacific time, and then work out what time it is that you ideally want to post. Or if you want to just find an easier way, I actually go to the posts page in the Insights, and I look at the date and the time that I've posted and published it on the left-hand side. And then I look at my reach and engagement rate. So I can see here, I got really good traction at 7:09 because I reached 1.8 K worth of people. And again, I got really great traction at 10:15 with 1.2, but at 4:20, I only got 909. Really interesting though, that 9:47, we only got 529. Where a little bit later we got 1.2. So it can be a very varied and very hard thing to identify what's the best for you. But if you just play around and pick certain time slots that you feel like you get better traction, that's possibly the best thing to do when you're posting or scheduling those posts on Facebook and Instagram. So we're nearly finished, but did anyone have any specific questions on social media that they'd like to ask?
Laura, there's one I would like to ask about Instagram. You often see repost, sometimes at the bottom of the actual post. What is the point of that in particular?
Yep, so they would have been using a third-party app to repost that photo, or they may have just reposted it by screenshotting the image and then uploading it as if it was their own post and crediting the image source, which is the better way to do it from an engagement perspective. But the reason that you would do this is so that you don't have to come up with all of the content yourself. So it's referred to as user-generated content. And if you can find that your potential customers or clients are taking fantastic images that suit the style or theme that you've got for your branding on your page, we should try and use them as best we can so that we don't have to come up with all the types of content. So I have a page that I manage that I purely just use user-generated content. So I just go through and I follow the hashtag feed, or I look at the post where they've tagged our business, and I go through and I pick out the ones that I think are the best, and then I would screenshot them and then post it as if it was our own, and then credit them for that photo source. If they had any children in it or their faces were clearly identifiable, I would definitely contact them first to check that they're okay with us using that image. But as long as I'm crediting them for that photo, if they have a public account, you actually can technically just reshare that photo. It's just courtesy to credit them.
Okay, great. We've got a couple of questions here. As a business who has 2,500 followers and who posts every day, how much time per week would you dedicate to managing, creating social media, Facebook and Instagram?
Yep. So for myself, I normally allow, this is very specific, but I've worked it out to be about 22 minutes per post. Only because by the time you think of what idea you want to post about, you find the image or the video that you want to use, and then you create this specific piece of content around it. It takes around 22 minutes on average to be able to do that. So for me, when I'm managing a client's Facebook page, if I'm doing 4 posts per week for them, so 2 posts on Facebook and 2 posts on Instagram, I would allocate an hour and a half to do those posts per week, and then I would schedule those posts out for the week. So if you were doing 7 posts, you'd probably find that you will get a little bit quicker the more you do, but you'd probably need at least 3 to 4 hours to be able to get them ready for the week.
And there was a follow-up to that with those figures on Facebook. You showed how many followers did that business have? That was your business, wasn't it? The King Thing Marketing?
Yeah, that would have been King Thing. So we have just over 2,000 followers on Facebook. And yeah, so we have 2,000 followers on Facebook. On Instagram, I think we've just got over 1,000. Yeah.
And how do you get verified on Instagram?
Yep, great question. So how to get verified on Instagram is just something that you access through the settings tab on Instagram. So there's like a tab there, I think it says verified itself. I don't actually remember what the exact setting is. If you type into Google how to get verified on Instagram, Instagram Help will bring up the exact steps that you need to do this. But basically what you do is you submit your account to this particular lot of, I guess like a contact form really, and you answer a couple of questions, and then they go through and they say yes or no. So it's like somebody sitting there in an office somewhere and they decide whether you get verified or not. There are a couple of criteria things that you need to meet. And I think the criteria is normally around how many followers do you have, what type of content, who are you trying to reach with this. It is really hard to get verified on Instagram, and especially as a business page, they are less likely to do it these days. And I know that a lot of people do get denied it. So it's just literally luck of the draw whether you get verified or not. I think you have to have over a certain amount of followers and everything. So yeah, my recommendation would be to look up Instagram Help to step you through those instructions. Specifically, I do know we talk about it a bit in an Instagram presentation, but yeah, it's a bit of a tough one to get verified on Instagram now. It used to be a lot easier process about 18 months ago.
And then another follow-up question, that 22 minutes, does that include the planning and the creating of the graphics? Wow, I'm really slow.
You're not really slow, don't worry. That's just an average, as I said. Sometimes it takes me half an hour, 45 minutes to come up with one post. It just depends what creative juices I have flowing on that day. So don't stress about if you are slower than that. keep in mind, I live and breathe in this space. So I manage 7 people's socials accounts. So I'm probably a little bit faster because I do it every day. So don't stress if you are a bit slower than that 22 minutes. But that probably, with the planning, I would always have that content planner and the planner that I was using. I normally do that every quarter. So I just use that as a guide each session. So I wouldn't create a new one of those every time, but it would include creating the graphics. Yeah.
That content planner, do you do that once a week or once a month, or how often would you fill that in?
Yep, so I fill that in once a quarter. So I do that brainstorm session every quarter. I will review it. I wouldn't start it again completely. If I have a really genius idea that I've thought of in the middle of the night at 3 a.m, as we often do, I will go and add it to that content planner just during the week whenever I have those ideas that pop into my head. But I normally review it every quarter just for the fact that I want to have a look at what engagement rates I've been getting on those styles of posts and what's been working for my business and what hasn't. And then if it hasn't been working, I'd stop doing those types of posts, or I might think of new ways of how I could approach it. So yeah, I use it more of a quarter type basis.
Do you have a goal that you want to reach as far as followers go? Do you think I want, to reach 1,000 people on Insta by October or something like that? Is that useful, or is that sort of unrealistic to have those kind of goals?
So I refer to those types of things as vanity metrics. So it just depends how deep you want to get invested in those types of metrics. For some people, it's really important to have a certain amount of followers and a certain amount of engagement. I guess I look at more how much. So for me, a lot of the goals that are revolved around how much traffic I can get to the website, how many things I can convert, or how many comments or something that I can get. So it's a bit more real, and I feel like it's a bit more realistic, because I find if we look at that followers number, they might not be people who genuinely are interested in our business. And so I don't try to get too heavy about how many people I've got following our page, or even sometimes now it's getting harder to get people to like our posts. People flick through, they might read it, they might look at it, and I know I do it myself, but you forget to like things now. You just keep scrolling. So it's important not to get too, bogged down in those vanity metrics, but it is important, to have some, goals around what you're trying to achieve with it. So think about what your overall goal is that you're trying to achieve with those social posts. So is it that you want people to click through to your website? Is it that you just want to get people to see? So it might be that you just want to have a really high reach. Your goal might be that you want to get to 500 followers on a certain date, and that's okay too. So yeah, just picking your goal and sticking to it is important, but yeah, don't get too bogged down in those vanity metrics.
What's the best way to get people to comment on your posts?
Yep. So the greatest way is, to write really engaging type questions, or using that poll feature where you're asking them to do something on your post. So again, if you're wanting them to answer back, say, comment in the post below, be that really specific, point them in the direction that you want them to go. That's probably the best way to get that engagement. Even if you've got tag who you would take, or tell us who you'd love to experience this journey with. Just those sorts of things are a great way to get that engagement and action happening in the comments section.
Okay. All right. I don't think there's any more questions at the moment.
Awesome. So like I said, nearly done. So I'm just going to go through some tools that can help you when you're creating any types of content for social media or your website. So I mentioned this one before, but this is probably my absolute favorite. Canva is a great tool. It makes you feel like you're your very own graphic designer. It is a free program. There is a paid version, but I've never personally used it because everything that I've ever needed to use on it is in the free section. In saying this, they are making a lot of the things that used to be free starting to cost. So just like everything in life, they give us a little bit of a snippet, give us a bit of a taste, and then they're like, now you have to pay for it because you're addicted to it. So it'll be interesting to see how much more of it we have to start paying for, and what we can get for free. But for the interim, you would definitely be fine with the free version. It's really good because it can help you post create the exact size that you need for Instagram and Facebook covers and Facebook posts. It's even got the correct size for the banners on your website. You can create menus and posters and so many different things in this platform. It's crazy, and it's really cool because you can add your own images, you can add your own branding, logos, all of those types of things to this to create some really cool posts that stand out. And if you want to combine a couple of different elements, it's a great way to be able to do that. Yeah, so definitely use Canva if you haven't already. If you are looking for an easier way to add emojis to your post without sitting there and flicking through that annoying little list with the little subjects down the bottom, Emojipedia is great because you can go to this website and you can add in the search bar exactly what you're looking for. So if you wanted a cupcake, you could type in that search emoji bar cupcake and it will bring up that post and you can copy and paste that into your section. So it'll save you heaps of time when you're looking for emojis for particular things. It's also a great one to go to if you don't know if there's an emoji that exists for what you're looking for. So you can type it in and see if there's something there that relates to what you're looking for. So I talked earlier about having really good high quality images and how it's important to invest in some good photography, and where we can try and use our own images, it's really important. If you do though find that you might not have the correct images that you want to use and you need to use some stock images, Unsplash is a really great site for creating high res images that look really good. We don't have to credit the people that post the images on this site, but you can if you like. I use it a fair bit for some of the pages where I just don't have enough of a stock library to use, and all of my posts are on their sites because you can just get some really cool shots that stand out and look a little bit different, and they don't look so too stock imagey. Another great app to download on your phone is Pages, and this is really good so that you can separate your personal Facebook presence to your business presence. So the Pages Manager app will allow you to just be your business, and then you can use your normal Facebook app just as your personal self. So just something that I wanted to let you know that you could download and access. If you are using a computer device, a great Chrome extension tool is Grammarly. It's really good because it picks up our spelling and also our grammar, so we can ensure that we are writing at our best all the time. I talked a little bit about how people watch video with sounds with no sound and read the captions. So there are some free captioning tools available in the market. So there's the Filmora video editor, there's Vont, Gravi, Text on Video, Square, Override, and Splice. Majority of these apps are free, in saying that they say that they're very easy to use. And I personally learnt through using Filmora video editor during COVID that it can be a little bit frustrating to use because you have to sit there and add the captioning tool over every bit of the slide on the video. So I did find it a little bit frustrating. And since then, Facebook have added into the platform that they can actually caption the videos themselves for you. So potentially start having a look at using that feature. I would say whenever you are using a captioning tool, and even if it did do it automatically for you, make sure you just go back over and double check what they've written, because sometimes it's a little bit like that voice to text with our Telstra mobiles. They can write some really interesting things in our captions, so that you can just override and correct them to what they're meant to be. PicMonkey, so this is a really cool collage tool. So if you're wanting to put multiple photos into one post and stylize it into a collage format, you can use this app or this online platform to be able to do that. It's really good for even editing photos as well, or even if you're trying to create a photo that you wanted your logo to be on. Very similar to Canva in that sense, but just is another app that some people like to use and has a little bit more features in the free part now compared to Canva. So Biteable, this is a really cool video platform to edit videos in. You can add different slides, you can add in music, you could add in before and after slides to your videos. It also can help add in some animation features to make your videos a little bit more, I guess, captivating and exciting. So it's actually a really cool one because it was made by a person in Hobart, this platform. So something that it has a free and a paid version, but just something that I thought I would share with you to help create some more captivating videos on your social feed. And an app that's a little bit vain is called Facetune. Facetune is really one that can airbrush, I guess, out those pimples or those wrinkles that we might not want in a photo, but why I actually like it is sometimes we have professional photos taken and they don't realize that there might be certain things in the background. So a few years ago, I had a professional photographer take a series of shoots for a hotel. They didn't realize in this beautiful scenic shot near the fireplace, which was really the main thing that we really wanted to push through their images, that they had a $5 note sitting on the coffee table, and it was something that just your eyes diverted to automatically. So using Facetune, we're actually able to blend out the $5 note to look like the color of the coffee table so that people couldn't see it anymore. So even though it is a little bit of a vein out, there is some cool purposes to it as well. And I'm sure some of us might even use it for some airbrushing every now and again if we want to get rid of a pimple or something out of a photo. And that's all I have on the free tools. I can see there's a couple of questions here, so I'm just going to have a look at them.
One of them was about recording. So yeah, just I am recording this, so I will put that up shortly after you finish.
No worries. There we go. I couldn't access it.
With the free mentoring training, you don't have to be in Tasmania, do you? I know it is a Tasmanian government sponsored.
Yeah, so you do have to be a Tasmanian business to be able to access the mentoring. You can access the resources on the website for free, but you do need to be a Tasmanian registered business to access the one-on-one coaching. It is done via Zoom though, or you can go in person in Hobart or Launceston, but we can offer that facility via Zoom. But yeah, you do need to be a Tasmanian ABN holder.
I imagine there'd be similar organisations in the rest of the states in Australia though, wouldn't there?
I know Queensland in particular have a very similar program because it was actually set up by the same people who set up the Tasmanian one, so they went and set it up for Queensland. I'm actually unsure about the other states. There is a federal-based program though called ASBAS, and they offer the 2-hour free mentoring. So it might even be worth having a look at that website and seeing what you can access if you are in different states of Australia, because that's a great initiative. And normally that costs $50 to be part of that program, but because of COVID, they're offering it for free at the moment.
Sorry, how do you spell that? I'll put it in the chat.
Yep, so it's ASBAS.
ASBAS. Okay.
Yeah. I'm not actually sure what it stands for. I think it's like Australian business, yeah, something like that.
Australian small business, yeah.
Yeah, so they have a couple of parts that come with that. So you can access the 2-hour mentoring with a marketing expert, but you can also access it for like an accounting perspective, or if you wanted to develop a more greater business strategy, you can get access to that as well through that program. So it's a little bit more of a broader business strategy program, but it is a federal one, so anybody can access that one.
Yep, I've just put it in there.
Excellent. Are there any other questions?
And we also had some free, some advice too through during the festival with Rounded, which was one of the presenters with software, and Holly from Oceans Accounting also offered some free follow-up sessions for people, and Media Super also offered to talk to people about their super, some things that are happening there. So there were those 2 options as well.
Excellent.
Is there anyone, I did the free session with Media Super. Oh, someone's already done a free session with Media Super with Eric Black. And thanks, Corinne. Corinne found it very, very useful. That is on my website too, on the festival website, sorry, where you can book Eric Black under our sponsorship page. And I know I've had a session with Eric too, and he was able to explain to me everything about my superannuation statement that I'd never actually understood in the past. So that was fantastic. So there is help out there, isn't there? But like, people don't have to feel like they're on their own, freelancers. Like, there's a lot of opportunities to go and get some information. TweetDeck, Catherine mentioned TweetDeck. Yes, I used TweetDeck. That's fantastic to schedule your tweets.
Yeah, that's actually something I didn't mention, is some tools to help you schedule. So with Facebook and Instagram, you can actually schedule them now through the Creator Studio, which is created by Facebook. So it's completely free for you to use as long as you've got your Instagram and Facebook business pages connected. So the Creator Studio is a really good one to be able to go and schedule them through. The other one that I use is Hootsuite. So Hootsuite, like hoot like an owl, and then suite as in SUITE. That lets you schedule through to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And I think even possibly Pinterest. So, and that lets you have one free account per a business. Yeah, so they're just a couple of the scheduling tools. And I think if you're posting every day or you're not sure if you're going to be online when your audience is online, that's where scheduling can be super handy, because you can have it all ready to go and you don't even need to do anything. It's just done for you to automatically be pushed out at that time of day.
Excellent. Anybody else got any? Does Creator Studio let you play around with your Instagram grid?
Great question. I really wish it did, but it doesn't. If you want to use one that you can play around with your Instagram grid and see what the new posts will look like before you schedule it, there is an app called Later.com. So Later is an Instagram scheduling tool. It does cost, I think it's about $9 per month. And that lets you schedule your posts, but also play around with the Instagram grid so you can see what it looks like before it goes live. So check that it goes with the flow of how you've been posting in a particular style.
All right, any more questions or any more tips that anybody would like to share that they've been using with social? I agree that using YouTube Live and all those sorts of avenues is a great way to engage with people. I know I watch a lot of YouTube Live.
Yeah, no, it is a really good one. We even have been using it for the Digital Ready program, just to even launch, like when we have a new presentation online, just to give you a little bit of a, I guess, idea about what that presentation's around, and the engagement that you get because people receive that notification is huge compared to what you would get if you just posted a normal post in the feed. So definitely something that I would recommend playing around. And you only have to look at influencers, for example. That's what they mainly do, is they use that live feature through Instagram stories or on their Facebook feed to chat with their audience. So if they're using it and making plenty of money, I think it's a good example to other businesses about how you can use that in your own strategy.
And with long form video, I know I prefer long form video actually. I mean, you often get 5 to 8 minutes like you were saying before, but I actually prefer longer presentations. So particularly for topics really interesting. So yeah, so you can play around with the lengths of your live video as well.
Definitely agree. And I think that's because of that rise of the podcast culture too, where we do like to sit there and we really like to listen and engage with a certain topic and take it to a deeper level if we can. And with that live video, you can do that, where if you did that in a post, people wouldn't read it, where if it's in a video format, people are more willing to sit there and listen to it because they are more, I guess, able to do it whilst they're doing another thing in their life.
Exactly. And you can stop and start it as well. You can go and do the dishes or whatever and then come back. And yeah, no, I think it's great.
Yeah, exactly.
Does anybody have any more questions? What website building program would you recommend?
Great question. So I love to build on Squarespace. So Squarespace is a template-based platform. It's really easy to manage, so you can build it yourself. But even if you've got it developed by someone else, you're able to then go in there easily and edit your own content and your own photos. Compared to other platforms, it also is really visually pleasing, which is the most important thing, because the user experience, we want them to be able to enjoy the time they spend on our website. It's also really cost effective. So to use Squarespace, it's $300 per year, and that includes your website hosting and your security certificate. So that's the thing that keeps that little lock symbol on your website. So it keeps it secure so people can know that they can go on your site and leave their contact information, and it's possibly not going to get hacked. Not definitely going to get hacked, but Squarespace is great, but it only has 2 levels. Oh, Okay. Yeah, we use Squarespace with all of our clients. We do have some clients that use it for, we do use Shopify with, but they're more shop based. The reason that we use it, I guess, is it's a bit more of an easier experience when you are building your own site compared to other platforms. I'm not sure what the 2-level things is that you were referring to, because I've never come across that, but we all have different experiences with different platforms. I've built on a number over the years, and I do think it's one of the easier ones, so that's why I prefer it. But interesting to hear other people's feedback like that.
I am a WordPress fan. I must admit, I build all my sites in WordPress simply because it has such a range of plugins available, and you can turn it into anything like a news site or an education site. I use it a lot. But people find that a bit frustrating because the back end of it can be a little bit confusing. So I think it just does depend on how intuitive it is for you and how easy you find it to follow.
I'm not a massive fan of WordPress, only because every time I go into the back end of one, I finally feel like I've figured it out, and then I go into someone else's and it's completely different. And I do hate the fact that you have to update the plugins all the time. So with Squarespace, one of the benefits is that everything's always updated for you, so you don't have to constantly update it and make sure it's the most recent version so that it keeps functioning at the best level. But I do love the fact that there is a bit more versatility, I guess, with WordPress and what you can do and the extra optional things that you can add to it. Squarespace is getting quite up there though with the things that you can add to it now, and it partners with a lot of different programs to be able to add them to your site. So I've just built one where I added a complete online learning portal to it so that people could log in and sign up and do some training through a different program. But I can see why people like WordPress as well for that reason.
Yes, and someone's just commented they use WordPress with Elementor, which is makes it a really easy, makes it a lot easier, the back end of WordPress, to use Elementor. So they're making it easier all the time for people, I think.
Yeah, that and WordPress Bakery, they make it so much easier for people to use WordPress sites to be able to manage it themselves.
Fantastic. Does anybody else want to add anything to the chat? Any tools or tips that they've found? What I'll do while we're waiting to see if anyone else wants to go into the chat, I'm just going to put the festival social channels into the feed, into the chat here, because we've often got workshops coming up each month. So if you want to keep in touch and see what's happening, then the best way to do that is through the socials. Actually, that was one question I was going to ask you as well. How useful do you find newsletters? Do you find most people don't read them anymore and they'd much prefer to check the social channels? Or how useful have you found newsletters? I know I often find that, you're subscribed to something you didn't really realize you were subscribed to because you forgot to uncheck the tick. And I often don't read the newsletters that come out, but that's just my experience. But how do you find newsletters?
Yeah, no, I think I have a very similar experience here. I didn't even realize that I'd signed up to things and that I don't read them. But it's really interesting when you read all the different data around newsletters and EDM marketing. It has the highest conversion rate of sales or services. So it's something that they say generates the most leads into your business, or the amount of sales that you have. So I guess it is an effective thing to, incorporate into your business, but you might not put too much effort into it. So just maybe reiterating something that you've put in some social posts. If you've done a blog post, maybe do a link to that, or just having a little bit of a feature moment to share with some of your audience members. I wouldn't do it too often. So I find that the places that send us a newsletter every day or every week, we don't tend to read them. Where if we do it every month or every quarter, like a bit of an update, people are more likely to read them.
Yeah. I agree. Right. Well, I think Adobe Spark, yes, I'm a big fan of Adobe Spark. I teach interactive storytelling in Adobe Spark, and you can create scrolling web pages, which look fantastic. So yes, Adobe Spark is definitely another one, and that is free. There is a paid version, as in the cloud. You sign up to Adobe Cloud and you can then brand all your content that way. But there's also a free version, so you don't have to pay. It's just that it's branded with the Adobe logo, but that's fine. You can use that. There's usually it's not too intrusive. So yes,
it's a really easy one to use too. I use it to create videos sometimes. I really like that one. So you can add a bit of an intro and outro slide really easily.
That's right. And it just looks fantastic. In fact, I did the post and the pre-festival attendee packs all in Spark because it was so much easier to update as you go as well. So, you know, you can send it out there, the link out there, and then you can just update it and it will instantly update across everything, all your platforms. So, yeah, that's an excellent one to mention. Right, I don't think we've got any more in the chat. Well, thank you, everybody. And Talara, thank you very much. That was very insightful. I mean, I use social a lot, but I always find that there's so much more to learn and there's so much more I could do better. So I found that really informative.
No, that's really great to hear. It's one of those areas where there's so much I could have talked about, and I know that I only lightly touched on most subjects because I wanted to cover so much, and it's something that I'm very passionate about and can talk for hours about. So if you can book into a session where you get that personalised 2 hours mentoring, it'd be really beneficial for people to be able to ask the questions that are specific for them. Look at what other resources are out there, because as I said, it's such a massive topic where there's so much more in depth we can go on certain things. But thank you so much for having me as part of this festival, and I hope that I've been able to help teach a couple of things today and it hasn't been too bad of a session.
No, it's been fantastic. So thank you once again for that. And anyone in Tasmania can do the 2-hour mentoring, and it sounds like you can do that in Queensland as well. And then maybe just check within your own state. I'm sure there'd be something very similar in each state.
Yeah, I'm pretty positive they have to offer something similar, I would imagine.
Exactly. Well, I'd like to thank you for being part of the Post Festival. It was fantastic, and I certainly learnt a lot, and I'm sure everybody else did as well. So yeah, keep an eye on our socials, and if anyone wants to get in touch with you, they just get in touch with you through King Thing Marketing. Is that
yes, that's
correct?
Right?
So,
yeah, if you put the King Thing Marketing, even my page on the website, my contact details are there. So my email address and my phone number. More than happy to chat with any of you about any questions that you have that you wanted to learn more about. I can talk to you anytime. That's fine.
Okay, I'll just put the website in the chat so they can go straight to King Thing. It's a nice picture of all you guys on the front there.
Page, yeah. So I've got a page on that website just under my name, under people that work here. So yeah, my contact details are on there.
Excellent. All right. Well, I think you need to go off and have some fluid. Talking for 2 hours is quite challenging. So that's great. So thanks very much,
no, thank
Laura.
You.
And I think I'll book in for your 2-hour mentoring session.
Sounds good. I'll speak with you then.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. All right. Well, thank you everybody for attending. And if you have any questions, please get in touch with me. And make the most of any of these opportunities that are available in your state. I know that they are encouraging people to get in touch and to do more on social media and build websites. So there's plenty of information out there, and looks like Talaura's free to answer any questions as well. Okay, well, we'll leave it there, and hopefully see you next time at another post-festival event or the actual Freelance Festival full event next time. Okay then, bye-bye.